Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military with Summary channel, and in this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first let's talk about Kiev, because lots of very important statements were made during the previous 12 hours. Zelensky hints at possible strike on Moscow's Victory Day parade. In his nightly address, Zelensky suggested that Kiev may target Russia's upcoming Victory Day parade in Moscow, describing it as a strategic pressure point. Right now, they're worried their parade might not happen, and they're right to be worried. But what they should really be worried about is that this war is still ongoing. They must end the war. That was stated by Zelensky. Very interesting article was published by Bloomberg. According to them, negotiations on Ukraine have reached a dead end. Moscow is demanding full control over the entire territory of the Kherson and Zaporozhye regions, as well as the DPR and LPR, which are part of the Russian Federation according to the constitution. According to the publication, this issue has become the case stumbling block. Another important statement was made by Donald Trump. Putin is easier to deal with than Zelensky. He has no cards and he asks for more and more. Another important statement was made by Michael Waltz. Ukraine remains one of the most corrupted countries in the world. So these are the statements from Ukraine and about Ukraine. But we have several more important statements from the Russian Federation, and I would like to point your attention. Sergei Lavrov stated that Vladimir Putin's proposal for a ceasefire by Victory Day is the beginning of the direct negotiations with Kiev without preconditions. Ukraine's demands for an immediate ceasefire is due to the fact that the Ukrainian armed forces are retreating. Another important statement made by Nebenzia, very important one. I would like to point your double attention to these statements. Kiev realizes its inevitable defeat is increasingly sliding into terrorist methods. Probably he was talking about assassination attempt of another Russian general. Zelensky must fulfill the promises made to voters to work towards peace with the Russian Federation and respect the rights of the Russian-speaking population of Ukraine. Russia expects the West to stop arming Kiev and convince Zelensky to enter into constructive dialogue. The dialogue between Russia and the United States continues. It is necessary to discuss the nuances of the future contours of the peace plan. If Ukraine agrees to a ceasefire, this could become a prelude to direct negotiations. And now the most important two paragraphs. Russia is extremely grateful to its Korean brothers for their help in the liberating of the Kursk region. The participation of the DPRK troops in the liberation of the Kursk region was in accordance with the international law. So another important statement regarding DPRK was made by the Russian State Duma. The Russian State Duma announced the preparation of the DPRK military for new tasks. The DPRK military may be used to participate in combat operations in other areas of the North Military District after the liberation of the Kursk region is completed. Head of the State Duma Defense Committee, Kartapalov. So the Russians are saying, if summarizing everything from Kiev, from Moscow, we see that if Ukrainians are not going to start negotiation process with the Russian Federation, then most likely the Russians will continue their offensive operation along the entire line of combat contact, and the most important, the Russians are planning to start using DPRK forces on the territory of Ukraine, maybe in the Sumy direction, maybe in the Kharkiv direction, maybe in Zaporozhye direction, maybe in any part of Ukraine. And obviously Ukrainians and the Western countries are not ready for this. Now let's switch back to the line of combat contact. We have some updates. First of all, let's talk about the Avdiivka direction. According to information we have, during the previous 12 hours, the armed forces of the Russian Federation managed to improve their positions between the settlements of Belovody and Loknya. So this is the situation by the end of the 29th of April, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 30th of April. We see that the Russians continue offensive with the purpose to establish complete control over this area. As for the Kursk region itself, today we got report that the Russians managed to improve their positions along the border. This information was provided by neutral mappers. So as you can see, when talking about Kursk region itself, there are just several square kilometers under complete Ukraine control. We're talking just about this part. The rest of the territory is either under complete Russian control or in the gray zone. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Kupiansk direction. As for the northern part, during the previous 24 hours, we got just one video how the Russians attacked the temporary deployment point of the armored forces of Ukraine on the territory of the settlement of Kivsharovka with the use of 1500. Very heavy explosion. Russians attacked temporary deployment point of FPV drone operators. As for the South Lyman direction, during the previous 12 hours, we got a lot of very important updates. Different sources reported that the Russians managed to break through the Ukrainian defense in this area and Tsukotsin pincers or Tsukotsin coloring the armored forces of Ukraine in the central part of the settlement of Nova. Furthermore, according to several neutral mappers, the Russians managed to establish complete control over the village by the name of Lipova. So this is the situation in this part. Let's compare the map between the dates. This is the situation, for example, by the end of the 29th of April of 2025, and as you can see, most likely during the previous night, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly, and according to information we have, according to neutral mappers, the Ukrainians began withdrawing from their positions in the central part of the settlement of Nova further in the western direction to this big forest. So we expect that if this information, if these updates are correct, most likely during the next 24 hours, the Russians will establish complete control over the settlement of Nova, and the battle for Itkadup is about to be started, the final battle. Furthermore, according to information we have during the previous night, according to pro-Russian resources, the armored forces of the Russian Federation managed to answer the eastern part of the settlement of Dolina. Zeleno Dolina, and according to several pro-Russian resources, this is approximately the territory that is already under complete Russian control. If the Russians begin the battle for this settlement as well, we see that Ukrainian defense in this direction collapsed completely. And after the fall of these two settlements like Rytkadup and Zeleno Dolina, the Russians most likely will begin offensive operation in the direction of the settlement of Lyman, because then they're going to have no problems and no barriers to begin advancing along 0526 road in the south direction with the purpose to attack the city of Lyman. Now let's move further. Very important updates we continue receiving from the Siversk direction. Several very reliable pro-Russian resources reported that during the previous 24 hours, during the previous night, the Russians managed to improve their positions to the north of the settlement of Verkhnekamenskaya. Pro-Russian resources reported that by the beginning of the 30th of April of 2025, the Russians were already controlling something like this. So this is not obviously the complete collapse of Ukrainian defense, but the situation is very close to this. The Russians are very, very close to the city of Siversk, and the Russians, as you can see, managed to outflank the settlement of Verkhnekamenskaya from the north and from the northwest. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the city of Chasiv Yar. According to information we have, it's already the third day in a row when we receive updates that the Russians are about to establish complete control over the citadel. The Ukrainians continue withdrawing their positions, and most likely these upcoming 24 hours is going to be decisive and final 24 hours for Ukrainians on the territory of this citadel. We are waiting when this map is going to be updated completely, at least without any geolocations, but by reliable resources. The sources confirm very heavy clashes on the territory of the settlement of Stupachki. The Russians reported that during the previous night, the Ukrainians made dozens of counterattacks in the direction of the settlement of Stupachki, but all those attacks were repelled by the Russians. The Russians managed to save control over this territory and to improve their positions around the settlement of Stupachki by taking under control additional territories. This is the situation by the end of the 29th of April, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 30th of April of 2025. As for the Kliban-Bykskaya and Konstantinovka direction, during the previous 24 hours, we got just small important update. The Russians, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, managed to improve their positions and to take under control 3 lines and fortifications to the north and to the northeast of the settlement of Sukhaya Balka. The Russians, as you can see, continue advancing in the direction of the settlement of Romanovka, and this settlement, as you can see according to this video, is under very heavy fire. In this video, we can see how the Russians were flying above the settlement, trying to discover positions of Ukrainian communication equipment, internet equipment, and as a result of artillery strikes and mortar strikes, all this equipment was destroyed. So we see that the Russians are preparing this village before offensive operation. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Pokrovsk area. According to information we have, the Russians managed to improve their positions along the railways between the settlements of Shevchenka and the settlement of Vozdvizhenka. The Russians continue advancing in the direction of Novoukrainka. This information was confirmed both by neutral mappers and by geolocations that provided by the Ukrainian side. In this video we can see the Russians that were moving along the railways in the direction of Ukrainian positions in Novoukrainka. The Ukrainians were bombing the Russians. Based on this video we have adjusted the map. This territory is to be considered as a contested zone or gray area. Now we have no doubts that the Russians improved their positions along the railways and the Russians continue advancing. According to information we have, the Russians managed to establish complete control over the settlement of Uspenovka. Yesterday this information was confirmed by pro-Ukrainian mappers. Today this information was confirmed by neutral mappers. As for the Novopavlovka direction, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions and to continue outflanking the settlement of Kotlarovka from the east and from the northeast. We see that the Russians are trying to get as close as possible to the last, let's say, supply line that Ukrainians used to control and to support their forces on the territory of Kotlarovka. This is a small village to the south of Moravka. If the Russians are able to cut this road, most likely the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back through the fields in the western directions towards the settlement of Novopavlovka, and this is going to be the beginning of Russian entrance of the Dnipro region. As for the South Donetsk direction, during the previous night, the Russians managed to improve their positions to the south of the settlement of Bogatyr by taking under control additional tree lines and fortifications. At the same time, we still haven't received even a single proof that the Russians managed to enter the village itself. So we see that currently the Russians still haven't managed to find a solution how to break Ukrainian defense and to enter this village, which is key village in this direction for the armored forces of Ukraine. As for the Zaporozhye direction and as for the Dnipro direction, during the previous 24 hours we haven't received anything special. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.